Adventurers, we are at that time again. We are at the second to last chapter of Order of the Phoenix. I hope you've been enjoying it thus far. It's obviously a joy to bring to life despite the little hiccups in the way. So, without further ado, let's get started with the chapter, shall we? Chapter 37, The Lost Prophecy. Harry's feet hit solid ground again. His knees buckled a little, and the golden wizard's head fell with a resounding clunk to the floor. He looked around and saw that he had arrived in Dumbledore's office. Everything seemed to have repaired itself during the headmaster's absence. The delicate silver instruments stood again upon the spindle-legged tables, puffing and whirring serenely. The portraits of the headmasters and headmistresses were snoozing in their frames. Heads falling back in armchairs were against the edge of their pictures. Harry looked through the window. There was a cool line of pale green along the horizon. Dawn was approaching. That is a beautiful description. I don't know if you can tell with that little sliver right there, but it isn't dawn here. But based on that description, it sounds so beautiful. Anyway, the silence and the stillness, broken only by the occasional grunt or snuffle from the sleeping portrait, was unbearable to him. If his surroundings could have reflected the feelings inside him, the pictures would have been screaming in pain. Hugging Harry. He walked around the quiet, beautiful office, breathing quickly, trying not to think. But he had to think. There was no escape. It was his fault Sirius died. It was all his fault. If he, Harry, had not been stupid enough to fall for Voldemort's trick, if he hadn't been so convinced that what he'd seen in his dream was real, if he had only opened his mind to the possibility that Voldemort was, as Hermione had said, banking on Harry's love of playing the hero, it was unbearable. He would not think about it. He could not stand it. There was a terrible hollow inside him he did not want to feel or examine. The dark hole where Sirius had been, where Sirius had vanished. Oh. Hugging Harry again. He did not want to be alone with that great silent space. He could not stand it. The picture behind him gave him a particularly loud grunting snore. Well, I'm not a snorer, so I'm not going to even attempt that, but for the grunting, I hope this is satisfactory. I tried, okay? And a cool voice said, Harry Potter. Venus Nigel's gave a long no. Well, my body typed that one. Gave a long yawn, stretching his arm as he watched Harry with shrewd, narrow eyes. And what brings you here in the early hours of morning? Said Venus. This office is supposed to be barred to all but the rightful headmaster. Or has Dumbledore sent you here? Oh, don't tell me. He gave another shuddering yawn. Yep, my body timed that one good too. Another message for my worthless great-great-grandson. Hey! Harry could not speak. Phineas and Nigellus did not know that Sirius was dead, but Harry could not tell him. To say it aloud would be to make it final, absolute, irretrievable. Ooh, I'm gonna have to steal that. Thank you, J.K. Rowling. A few more of the portraits had stirred now. Terror of being interrogated made Harry stride across the room and seize the doorknob. It would not turn. He was shut in. I hope this means, said the corpulent. Sounds about right. Corpulent red-nosed wizard. Rudolph the red-nosed wizard. Something, something, something red nose. I know it's not Christmas yet, but I couldn't help it. So, hung on the wall behind Dumbledore's desk. But Dumbledore will soon be back with us. Harry turned. The wizard was eyeing him with great interest. Harry nodded. He tugged again on the doorknob behind his back, but it remained immovable. Oh, good, said the wizard. It has been very dull without him. Very dull indeed. I imagine it would. He settled himself on the throne-like chair on which he had been painted and smiled benignly upon Harry. Dumbledore thinks very highly of you, as I am sure you know, he said comfortably. Oh, yes, holds you in great esteem. Gee, that's, rather obvious, don't you think? Moving forth. The guilt filling the whole of Harry's chest, like some monstrous, weighty parasite, now writhed and squirmed. Harry could not stand this. He could not stand being Harry anymore. I've had a few moments like that too, Harry. Usually whenever I was at my controllers. But not to dwell on the past. Let's continue. He had never felt more trapped inside his own head and body, never wished so intensely that he could be somebody, anybody else. Yeah, again, I have a few moments like that. The empty fireplace burst into emerald green flame, making Harry leap away from the door, staring at the man spinning inside the grate. As Dumbledore's tall form unfolded itself from the fire, the wizards and witches on the surrounding walls jerked awake. Many of them gave cries of welcome. Okay, welcome back! Welcome back, sir! Welcome back! Welcome back! Welcome! 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 You're welcome for all those welcomes. Thank you, said Dumbledore softly. He did not look at Harry at first, but walked over to the perch beside the door and withdrew from an inside pocket of his robes the tiny featherless box, whom he placed gently on the tray of soft ashes beneath the golden post where the full-grown fox usually stood. Well, Harry, said Dumbledore, finally turning away from the baby bird, you will be pleased to hear that none of your fellow students are going to suffer lasting damage from the night's events. Harry tried to say good, but no sound came out. It seemed to him that Dumbledore was reminding him of the amount of damage he had caused by his actions tonight, and though Dumbledore was for once looking at him directly, his expression was kindly rather than accusatory. Harry could not bear to meet his eyes. Madam Pomfrey is patching up everybody up now, said Dumbledore. Infant Tonks may need to spend a little time in St. Mungo's, but it seems that she will make a full recovery. Don't call her Infidora. I, I found it fitting, okay? Harry contented himself with nodding at the carpet, which was growing lighter as the sky outside grew paler. He was sure that all of the portraits around the room were listening eagerly to every word Dumbledore spoke, wondering where Dumbledore and Harry had been and why there had been injuries. "I know how you are feeling, Harry," said Dumbledore very quietly. "No, you don't," said Harry, and his voice was suddenly loud and strong. White-hot anger leapt inside him. Dumbledore knew nothing about his feelings. Actually, Harry, he does. And in case you're wondering, newcomers, you're gonna have to wait and see to understand what I mean. Advanced Potterheads, you know exactly what I'm talking about. "You see, Dumbledore," said Phineas Nigel slyly, "never try to understand the students. They hate it. They would much rather be tragically misunderstood, wallow in self-pity, stew in their own—" "That's enough, Phineas," said Dumbledore. Harry turned his back on Dumbledore and stared determinedly out of the opposite window. He could see the Quidditch stadium in the distance. Sirius had appeared there once, disguised as the shaggy black dog, so he could watch Harry play. He'd probably come to see whether Harry was as good as James had been. Harry never asked him. "Oh, there's no shame in what you are feeling, Harry," said Dumbledore's voice. "On the contrary, the fact that you can feel pain like that is your greatest strength." And thus this reinforces my own quote. Sometimes your biggest weakness can also be your biggest strength. And yes, I did invent that. Please do not steal it. Without my consent. Harry felt the white-hot anger lick his insides, blazing in the terrible emptiness, filling him with the desire to hurt Dumbledore for his calmness and his empty words. "My greatest strength, is it?" said Harry, his voice shaking as he stared out at the Quidditch stadium, no longer seeing it. "I haven't got a clue. You don't know." "What don't I know?" asked Dumbledore calmly. It was too much. Harry turned around, shaking with rage. "I don't want to talk about how I feel, all right? Harry, suffering like this proves you are still a man. The pain is part of being human." "Then I don't want to be human," Harry roared, and he seized one of the delicate silver instruments from the spindle-legged table beside him and flung it across the room. It shattered into 100 tiny pieces against the wall. Several of the pictures let out yells of anger and fright, and the portrait of Armando Dippet said, "Really?" "I don't care," Harry yelled at them, snatching up a lunoscope and throwing it into the fireplace. I hope those are fireproof. "I've had enough. I've seen enough. I want out. I want it to end. I don't care anymore." He seized the table on which the silver instrument had stood and threw that too. It broke apart on the floor and the legs rolled in different directions. "You do care," said Dumbledore. He had not flinched or made a single move to stop Harry demolishing his office. I mean, I would do the same because it helps him get out his frustration, but at the same time, I would also offer to channel it in a more. I would do art therapy with Harry in this case. Because he's obviously angry, part of the 5 stages of grief. He's still in denial. Pretty sure there's some bargaining going on there a little bit too. I took psychology and I like the field. Does it show? Anyhow. His expression was calm, almost detached. You care so much you feel as though you bleed to death with the pain of it. I don't! Harry screamed so loudly that he felt his throat might tear, and for a second he wanted to rush at Dumbledore and break him too. Shatter that calm old face, shake him, hurt him, make him feel some tiny part of the horror inside Harry. Oh, yes, you do, said Dumbledore, still more calmly. You have now lost your mother, your father, and the closest thing to a parent you have ever known. Of course you care. You don't know how I feel, Harry roared. You're standing there. You... But words were no longer enough. Smashing things was no more help. He wanted to run. He wanted to keep running and never look back. He wanted to be somewhere he could not see the clear blue eyes staring at him. That hatefully calm old face. He ran to the door, seized the doorknob, and wrenched at it. But the door would not open. Harry turned back to Dumbledore. Let me out, he said. He was shaking from head to foot. No, said Dumbledore simply. For a few seconds they stared at each other. Let me out, said Harry again. No, Dumbledore repeated. If you keep me in here, if you don't let me... By all means, continue destroying my possessions, said Dumbledore sternly. I dare say I have too many. I wonder how many is too many. How many objects do you think Dumbledore has? I'm a little curious to know your insights on this. Let me know in the comments. He walked around his desk and sat down behind it, watching Harry. Let me out, said Harry yet again, in a voice that was cold and almost as calm as Dumbledore's. Not until I have had my say, said Dumbledore. Do you think I want to? Do you think I give up? I don't care what you've got to say, Harry roared. I don't want to hear anything you've got to say. You will, said Dumbledore sadly, because you are not nearly as angry with me as you ought to be. If you are to attack me, as I know you are close to doing, I would like to have it thoroughly earned it. What are you talking? It is my fault that Sirius died, said Dumbledore clearly. Or should I say, almost entirely my fault. I will not be so arrogant as to claim responsibility for the whole. Sirius was a brave, clever, and energetic man, and such men are not usually content to sit at home in hiding while they believe others to be in danger. Nevertheless, you should have never believed for an instant that there was any necessity for you to go to the Department of Mysteries tonight. If I had been open with you, Harry, as I should have been, you would have known for a long time that Voldemort might try and lure you to the Department of Mysteries. And you would never have been tricked into going there tonight. And Sirius would not have had to come after you. That blame lies with me, and me alone. Harry was still standing with his hand on the doorknob, but he was unaware of it. He was gazing at Dumbledore, hardly breathing, listening, yet barely understanding what he was hearing. Please sit down, said Dumbledore. It was not an order. It was a request. Harry hesitated, then walked slowly across the room, now littered with silver cogs and fragments of wood, taking the seat facing Dumbledore's desk. "Am I to understand," said Phineas Nightjar slowly from Harry's left, "that my great-great-grandson, the last of the cast, is dead?" "Yes, Phineas," said Dumbledore. "I don't believe it," said Phineas brusquely. Harry turned his head in time to see Phineas marching out of his portrait, and knew that he had gone to visit his other painting in Grimmauld Place. He would walk, perhaps, from portrait to portrait, calling for Sirius through the house. Hugging the portrait of Phineas Nightjar was black. "Harry, I owe you an explanation," said Dumbledore. "An explanation of an old man's mistakes. For I see now that what I have done and not done with regard to you bears all the hallmarks of the failings of age. Youth cannot know how age thinks and feels, but old men are guilty if they forget what it was to be young, and I seem to have forgotten lately." The sun was rising properly now. There was a rim of dazzling orange visible over the mountains, and the sky above it was colourless and bright. The light fell upon Dumbledore, upon the silver of his eyebrows and beard, upon the lines gouged deeply into his face. "I guessed 15 years ago," said Dumbledore, "when I saw the scar upon your forehead, what it might mean. I guessed it might be a sign of a connection forged between you and Voldemort." "You've told me this before, Professor," said Harry bluntly. He did not care about being rude. He did not care about anything very much anymore. Hugging Harry for the third time. "Yes," said Dumbledore apologetically. "Yes, but you see, it is necessary to start with your scar, for it became apparent, shortly after you rejoined the magical world, that I was correct, and that your scar was giving you warnings when Voldemort was close to you, or I was feeling powerful emotion." "I know," said Harry wearily, "and this ability of yours to detect Voldemort's presence, even when he is disguised, to know what he is feeling when his emotions are aroused, has become more and more pronounced since Voldemort returned to his own body and his full powers." Harry did not bother to nod. He knew all this already. "More recently," said Dumbledore, "I became concerned that Voldemort might realize that this connection between you exists. Sure enough, there came a time when you entered so far into his mind and thoughts that he sensed your presence. I am speaking, of course, of the night you witnessed the attack on Mr. Weasley." "Yes, Snape told me," Harry muttered. "Professor Snape, Harry," Dumbledore corrected him quietly. "But did you not wonder why it was not I who explained this to you? Why I did not teach you occlumency? Why I had not so much as looked at you for months?" Harry looked up. He could see now that Dumbledore looked sad and tired. "Yeah," Harry mumbled. "Yeah, I wondered. You see," continued Dumbledore heavily, "I believed it could not be long before Voldemort attempted to force his way into your mind, to manipulate and misdirect your thoughts, and I was not eager to give him more incentives to do so. I was so that if he realized that our relationship was, or had ever been closer than that of headmaster and pupil, he would seize his chance to use you as a means to spy on me. I feared the uses to which he would put you, the possibility that he might try and possess you. Harry, I believe I was right to think that Voldemort would have made use of you in such a way. On those rare occasions when we had close contact, I thought I saw a shadow of him stir behind your eyes. I was trying and distancing from myself from you to protect you. An old man's mistake. Harry remembered the feeling that a dormant snake had risen in him, ready to strike, on those occasions when he and Dumbledore made eye contact. Dumbledore's aim in possessing you, as he demonstrated tonight, would not have been my destruction. It would have been yours. He hoped when he possessed you briefly a short while ago that I would sacrifice you in the hope of killing him. He sighed deeply. Harry was letting the words wash over him. It would have been so interesting to know all this a few months ago, and now it was meaningless compared to the gaping chasm inside him that was the loss of Sirius. None of it mattered. Sirius told me that you felt Voldemort awake inside you the very night you had the vision of Arthur Weasley's attack. I knew at once that my worst fears were correct. Voldemort from that point realized he could use you. In an attempt to arm you against Voldemort's assault on your mind, I arranged occlumency lessons with Professor Snape. He paused. Harry watched the sunlight, which was sliding slowly across the polished surface of Dumbledore's desk, illuminate a silver inkpot and a handsome scarlet quill. Harry could tell that the portraits all around them were awake and listening raptly to Dumbledore's explanation. He could hear the occasional rustle of robes, the slight clearing of the throat. Phineas Nigellus had still not returned. Professor Snape discovered, Dumbledore resumed, that you had been dreaming about the door to the Department of Mysteries for months. Voldemort, of course, had been obsessed with the possibility of hearing the prophecy ever since he regained his body, and as he dwelled on that door, so did you, though you did not know what it meant. And then you saw Rookwood, who worked in the Department of Mysteries before his arrest, telling Voldemort what we had known all along, that the prophecies held in the Ministry of Magic are heavily protected. Only the people to whom they refer can lift them from the shelves without suffering madness. In this case, either Voldemort himself would have to enter the Ministry of Magic and risk revealing himself at last, or else you would have to take it for him. It became a matter of even greater urgency that you should master occlumency. But I didn't, muttered Harry. He said it aloud to try and ease the dead weight of guilt inside him. A confession must surely relive some of the terrible pressure squeezing his heart. didn't practice, didn't bother. I could have stopped myself from having those dreams. Marnie kept telling me to do it, but I had never been able to show me where to go. And Sirius wouldn't. Excuse me. Something was erupting inside Harry's head. The need to justify himself, to explain. I tried to check he'd really taken Sirius. I went to Umbridge's office. I spoke to Creature in the fire. He said Sirius wasn't there. He said he'd gone. Creature lied, said Dumbledore calmly. You were not his master. He could lie to you without needing to punish himself. Creature intended you to go to the Ministry of Magic. He sent me on purpose. Oh yes. Creature, I'm afraid, has been serving more than one master for months. How? Said Harry blankly. He hasn't been out of the remote place for years. Creature seized his opportunity shortly before Christmas, said Dumbledore, and Sirius, apparently, shouted at him to get out. He took Sirius at his word and interpreted as this was an order to leave the house. He went to the only black member for whom he had any respect left. Black's cousin Narcissa, sister of Bellatrix and wife of Lucius Malfoy. How do you know all this? Harry said. His heart was beating very fast. He felt sick. He remembered worrying about Creature's odd absence over Christmas. Remembered him turning up again in the attic. Creature told me last night, said Dumbledore. See, when you gave Professor Snape that cryptic warning, he realized that you had a vision of Sirius trapped in the bowels of the Department of Mysteries. He, like you, attempted to contact Sirius at once. You should explain that members of the Order of the Phoenix have more reliable methods of communicating than the fire in Dolores' Umbridge office. Professor Snape found that Sirius was alive and safe in a remote place. When, however, you did not return from your trip into the forest with Dolores Umbridge, Professor Snape grew worried that you still believed Sirius to be a captive of Lord Voldemort. He alerted certain Order members at once. Dumbledore heaved a great sigh. Then said, Alistair Moody, Nymphadora Tonks, do not call her Nymphadora. Kingsley Shacklebolt and Remus Lupin were at headquarters when he made contact. All agreed to go to your aid at once. Professor Snape requested that Sirius remain behind, as he needed somebody to remain at headquarters to tell me what happened, for I was due there at any moment. In the meantime, he, Professor Snape, intended to search the forest for you. But Sirius did not wish to remain behind while the others went to search for you. He delegated to Creature the task of telling me what happened. And so it was that when I arrived at Remote Place shortly after they all had left for the ministry, it was the elf who told me, nothing fit to burst, where Sirius had gone. He was laughing, said Harry in a hollow voice. Oh yes, said Dumbledore. You see, Creature was not able to betray us totally. He is not secret keeper for the Order. He could not give the Malfoys our whereabouts, or tell them any of the Order's confidential plans that he had been forbidden to reveal. He was bound by the enchantments of his kind, which is to say that he could not disobey a direct order from his master Sirius. but he gave narcissistic information of the sort that is very valuable to Voldemort. Yet must have seemed much too trivial for Sirius to think of banning him from repeating it. Like what? Said Harry. Like the fact that the person Sirius cared most about in the world was you, said Dumbledore quietly. Like the fact that you were coming to regard Sirius as a mixture of a father and brother. Voldemort knew already, of course, that Sirius was in the Order, that you knew where he was, but Creature's information made him realize that one person whom would go to any lengths to rescue was Sirius Black. Harry's lips were cold and numb. So when I asked Creature if Sirius was there last night, the Malfoys, undoubtedly on Voldemort's instructions, told him he must find a way of keeping Sirius out of the way once you had seen the vision of Sirius being tortured. Then, if you decided to check whether Sirius was at home or not, Creature would be able to pretend he was not. Creature injured Buckbeak the Hippogriff yesterday, and at the moment when he made your appearance at the fire, Sirius was upstairs trying to tend to him. Oh. I hope Buckbeak's okay now. There seemed to be very little air in Harry's lungs. His breathing was quick and shallow. And Creature told you all this. And that, he croaked. He did not wish to tell me, said Dumbledore, but I am sufficiently accomplished legitimate myself to know when I am being lied to, and I persuaded him to tell me the full story before I left for the Department of Mysteries. And, whispered Harry, his hands curled in full fist on his knees, and Hermione kept telling us to be nice to him. She was quite right, Harry, said Dumbledore. I warned Sirius when we adopted 12 Grimmauld Place as our headquarters that Creature must be treated with kindness and respect. I also told him that Creature could be dangerous to us. I do not think that Sirius took me very seriously, or that he ever saw Creature as a being with feelings as acute to humans. Don't you talk about Sirius like... Harry's breath was constricted. He could not get the words out properly, but the rage that had subsided so briefly had burdened him again. He would not let Dumbledore criticize Sirius. Well, yeah, you should never speak ill of the dead. Creature's lying. Pal. He served. The creature is what he has been made by wizards, Harry, said Dumbledore. Yes, he is to be pitied. His existence has been as miserable as your friend Dobby's. He was forced to do Sirius's bidding, because Sirius was the last of his family to which he was enslaved. But he felt no true loyalty to him, and whatever Creature's faults, it must be admitted that Sirius did nothing to make Creature's lot easier. Don't talk about Sirius like that, Harry yelled. He was on his feet again, furious, ready to fly at Dumbledore, who had plainly not understood Sirius at all, how brave he was, how much he suffered. What about Snape? Harry spat. I'm not talking about him, are you? When I told him Voldemort had Sirius, he just sneered at me as usual. Harry knew that Professor Snape had no choice but to pretend not to take you seriously in front of Dolores Umbridge, said Dumbledore steadily. But as I have explained, he informed the Order as soon as possible about what you said. It was he who deduced where you conned when you did not return from the forest. It was he, too, who gave Professor Umbridge fake ferrets a serum when she was attempting to foil you to tell of Sirius' whereabouts. Harry disregarded this. He felt a savage pleasure in blaming Snape, and it seemed to be easing his own sense of dreadful guilt, and he wanted to hear Dumbledore agree with him. Snape cold-headed Sirius about staying in the house. He made out Sirius was a coward. Sirius was much too old and clever to have allowed such feeble taunts to hurt him, said Dumbledore. Snape stopped giving me occlumency lessons, Harry snarled. He threw me out of his office. I am aware of it, said Dumbledore heavily. I have already been said that it was a mistake for me not to teach you myself, though I was sure at the time that nothing could have been more dangerous than to open your mind even further to Voldemort while in my presence. Snape made it worse. My scar always hurt worse after lessons with him. Harry remembered Ron's thoughts on this subject and plunged on. How do you know he wasn't trying to soften me up for Voldemort? Make it easier for him to get inside my... I trust Severus Snape, said Dumbledore simply. But I forgot another old man's mistake, that some wounds run too deep for the healing. I thought Professor Snape could overcome his feelings about your father. I was wrong. But that's okay, is it? Yelled Harry, ignoring the scandalized faces and disapproving mutterings of the portraits covering the walls. It's okay to Snape to hate my dad, but it's not okay for Sirius to hate Kreacher. Sirius did not hate Kreacher, said Dumbledore. He regarded him as a servant unworthy of much interest or notice. Indifference and neglect often do much worse damage than outright dislike. They really do. I have some experience with that, and it still hurts me to this day a little bit. Especially considering a lot of it's from my controller-in-law. Some things never really leave you from that. Anyway. The fountain we destroyed tonight told a lie. We wizards have been mistreated and abused our fellows for too long, and we are now reaping our reward. So Sirius deserved what he got, did he? Harry yelled. I did not say that, nor will you ever hear me say it, Dumbledore replied quietly. Sirius was not a cruel man. He was kind to house elves in general. He had no love for Kreacher, because Kreacher was a living reminder of the home Sirius hated. Yeah, he did hate it, said Harry, his voice cracking, turning his back on Dumbledore and walking away. The sun was bright inside the room now, and the eyes of all the portraits followed him as he walked, without realizing what he was doing, without seeing the office at all. You made him stay shut up in that house, and he hated it. That's why he wanted to get out last night. I was trying to keep Sirius alive, said Dumbledore quietly. People don't like being locked up, said Harry furiously, rounding on him. You did it to me all last summer. I'm pretty sure the Dursleys also did it to him too. Especially when you consider events from Sorcerer's Stone. Dumbledore closed his eyes and buried his face in his long-fingered hands. Harry watched him, but this uncharacteristic sign of exhaustion sadness, or whatever it was from Dumbledore, did not soften him. On the contrary, he felt even angrier that Dumbledore was showing signs of weakness. He had no business being weak when Harry wanted to rage and storm at him. Dumbledore lowered his hands and surveyed Harry through his half-moon glasses. "This time," he said, "I need to tell you what I should have told you 5 years ago, Harry. Please sit down. I'm going to tell you everything. I ask only a little patience. You will have your chance to rage at me, to do whatever you like. When I have finished, I will not stop you." Harry glared at him for a moment, then flung himself back into the chair opposite Dumbledore and waited. Dumbledore stared for a moment at the sunlit grounds outside the window, then looked back at Harry and said, 5 years ago you arrived at Hogwarts, Harry, safe and whole, as I had planned and intended. Well, not quite whole. You suffered. I knew you would when I left you on your aunt and uncle's doorstep. I knew I was commending you to 10 dark and difficult years. He paused. Harry said nothing. You might ask, and with good reason, why it had to be so. Why could some wizarding family not have taken you in? Many would have done so more than gladly, and would have been honored and delighted to raise you as a son. I would welcome Harry with open arms. My answer is that my priority was to keep you alive. You were in more danger than perhaps anyone but myself realized. Voldemort had been vanquished hours before, but his supporters, and many of them almost as terrible as he, were still at large. Sorry, not in voice. Were still at large, angry, desperate, and violent. And I had to make my decision too with regard to the years ahead. Did I believe that Voldemort was gone forever? No. I knew not whether it would be 10, 20, or 50 years before he returned. But I was sure he would do so, and I was sure, knowing him as I have done, that he would not rest until he killed you. I knew Voldemort's knowledge of magic is perhaps more extensive than any wizard alive. I knew that even my most complex and powerful protective spells and charms were unlikely to be invincible if he ever returned to full power. But I knew too where Voldemort was weak, and so I made my decision. He would be protected by an ancient magic of which he knows, which he despises, and which he has always, therefore, underestimated, to his cost. I am speaking, of course, of the fact that your mother died to save you. She gave you a lingering protection you never expected, a protection that flows in your veins to this day. I put my trust, therefore, in your mother's blood. I delivered you to her sister, her only remaining relative. I still would like to know what happened to Mr. and Mrs. Evans. They're Harry's maternal grandparents, for crying out loud. She doesn't love me, said Harry at once. She doesn't care. But she took you. Dumbledore cut across it. She may have taken you grudgingly, furiously, unwillingly, bitterly, yet she still took you. And in doing so she sealed the charm I placed upon you. Your mother's sacrifice made the bond of love the strongest shield I could give you. I still don't know how you could still call home the place where your mother's blood dwells. There you cannot be touched or harmed by Voldemort. He shed her blood, but it lives on you. It lives on in you and her sister. Her blood became your refuge. We need return there only once a year. But as long as you can still call it home, there he cannot hurt you. Your aunt knows this. I explained what I had done in the letter I left with you on her doorstep. She knows that allowing you house room may have well kept you alive for the past 15 years. Well, I would hardly call the Dursley household a home, but I do admire Dumbledore's well intentions here. Moving forth. Wait, said Harry. Wait a moment. He sat up straighter in his chair, staring at Dumbledore. You said that loud. You told her to remember. It was your voice. I thought, said Dumbledore, inclining his head slightly, that she might need reminding of the pact she had sealed by taking you. I suspected the Dementor attack might have awoken her to the dangers of having you as a surrogate son. It did, said Harry quietly. Well, mine for more than her. He wanted to chuck me out, but after the hurricane, she said I had to stay. He stared at the floor for a moment, then said, But what's this got to do with... He could not say Sirius's name. 5 years ago then, continued Dumbledore, as though he had not paused in his story, we arrived at Hogwarts, neither as happy nor well as nourished as I would have liked, perhaps, yet alive and healthy. You were not the pampered little prince, but as normal a boy as I could have hoped under the circumstances. Thus far my plan was working well. And then, when you remember the events of your first year at Hogwarts quite grimly as I do, you rose magnificently to the challenge that faced you, and sooner, much sooner than I had anticipated, you found yourself face to face with Voldemort. You survived again. You did more. You delayed his return to full power and strength. You fought a man's fight. I was prouder of you than I can say. Yet there was a flaw in this wonderful plan of mine, said Dumbledore. An obvious flaw that I knew, even then, might be the undoing of it all. And yet, knowing how important it was that my plan should succeed, I told myself that I would not permit this flaw to ruin it. I alone could prevent this, so I alone must be strong. And here was my first test as you lay in the hospital wing, weak from your struggle with Voldemort. I don't understand what you're saying, said Harry. Don't you remember asking me, as you lay in the hospital wing, why Voldemort had tried to kill you when you were a baby? Harry nodded. Ought I have told you then? Harry stared into the blue eyes and said nothing, but his heart was racing again. You do not see the flaw of the plan yet? No, perhaps not. As you know it, I decided not to answer you. "11," I told myself. I was much too young to know. I never intended to tell you when you were 11. The knowledge would be too much at such a young age. I should have recognized the danger signs then. I should have asked myself why I did not feel more disturbed that you had already asked me the question to which I knew one day I must give a terrible answer. I should have recognized that I was too happy to think that I did not have to do it on that particular day. You were too young, much too young. And so we entered your second year at Hogwarts. And once again you met challenges even grown wizards could never have faced. Once again you acquitted yourself beyond my wildest dreams. You did not ask me again, however, why Voldemort had left that mark upon you. You discussed your scar, yes. We came very, very close to the subject. Why did I not tell you everything? Well, it seemed to me that 12 was after all, hardly better than 11 to receive such information. I allowed you to leave my presence, blood-stained, exhausted, but exhilarated. And if I felt a twinge of unease, then I ought to perhaps told you that it was swiftly silenced. You were still so young to see, and I could not find it in me to spoil that night of triumph. Do you see, Harry? Do you see the flaw in my brilliant plan now? I had fallen into the trap I had foreseen, that I had told myself I could avoid, that I must avoid. I cared about you too much, said Dumbledore simply. I cared more for your happiness than your knowing the truth. More than your own peace of mind than my plan. More for your own life than the lives that might be lost if the plan failed. In other words, I acted exactly as Voldemort expects we fools who love to act. Is there a defense? I defy anyone who has watched you as I have. And I have watched you more closely than you can have imagined. Not to want to save you more pain than you had already suffered. What I did care of no version of nameless and faceless people. Non-side creatures were slaughtered in the vague future. If in the here and now you were alive, well and happy, I never dreamed that I would have such a person on my hands. We entered your third year. I watched from afar as you struggled to repel his mentors, as you found Sirius, learned what he was and rescued him. I'd like to tell you then that in that moment you had triumphantly snatched your godfather from the jaws of the ministry. But now at the age of 13 my excuses were running out. Young you might be, but you have proved you were exceptional. My conscience was uneasy, Harry. I knew the time must come soon. But you came out of the maze last year, having watched Cedric Diggory die, having escaped death so narrowly yourself. And I did not tell you, though I knew. Now, Voldemort had returned. I must do it soon, and now tonight. I know you have long been ready for the knowledge I have kept you for so long. Because you have proved that I should have placed the burden upon you before this. My only defense is this. I have watched you struggling under more burdens than any student who has ever passed through this school, and I could not bring myself to add another, the greatest one of all. Harry waited, but Dumbledore did not speak. I still don't understand. Voldemort tried to kill you when you were a child because of prophecy made shortly before your birth. He knew the prophecy had been made, though he did not know its full contents. He set out to kill you when you were still a baby, believing he was fulfilling the terms of the prophecy. He discovered, to his cost, that he was mistaken. When the curse intended to kill you backfired. And so, in his return to his body, and particularly since your extraordinary escape from him last year, he has been determined to hear that prophecy in its entirety. This is the weapon he has been seeking so assiduously since his return, the knowledge of how to destroy you. The sun had fully risen now. Dumbledore's office was bathed in it. The glass case in which the sword of Godric Gryffindor resided gleamed white and opaque. The fragments of the instruments Harry had thrown to the floor glistened like raindrops, and behind him, the baby fox made soft chirruping noises in his nest of ashes. The prophecy smashed. Said Harry blankly. I was pulling Neville up those benches in the room where the archway was, and I ripped his robes and it fell. The thing that smashed was merely the record of the prophecy being kept by the Department of Mysteries. But the prophecy was made to somebody, and that person has the means of recalling it perfectly. Who heard it? Asked Harry, though he thought he knew the answer already. I did, said Dumbledore. On a cold, wet night 16 years ago, in a room above the bar at the Hogshead Inn, I had gone there to see an applicant for the post of divination teacher, though it was against my inclination to allow the subject of divination to continue at all. The applicant, however, was the great-great-granddaughter of a very famous, very gifted seer, and I thought it common politeness to meet her. I was disappointed. It seemed to me that she did not have a trace of the gift herself. I told her, courteously I hope, that I did not think she would be suitable for the post. I turned to leave. Dumbledore got to his feet and walked past Harry to the black cabinet that stood beside Fox's perch. He bent down, slid back a catch, and took from inside it the shallow stone basin carved with ferns around the edges, in which Harry had seen his father tormenting Snape. Dumbledore walked back to the desk, placed the pensieve upon it, and raised his wand to his own temple. From it he withdrew silvery, gossamer fine strands of thought, clinging to the wand, and deposited them into the basin. He sat back down behind his desk and watched his thoughts swirl and drift inside the pensieve for a moment. Then with a sigh he raised his wand and prodded the silvery substance with its tip. A figure rose out of it, draped in shawls, her eyes magnified to the enormous size behind her glasses, and she revolved slowly, her feet in the basin. But when Sybil Trelawney spoke, it was not in her usual ethereal, mystic voice, but in the harsh, hoarse tones Harry had heard her use once before. Okay, it's been a while since I've done this, so hopefully I do it well again. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not. And either he must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the seventh month dies. And while I'm on the topic here, the theory that Neville being in Harry's spot makes no sense to me whatsoever. The reason? Born as the seventh month dies. Harry's birthday is the 31st of July. Neville's is the 30th of July, so literally a day before. So, with this knowledge, the 31st of July is literally the end of July. that obviously has made it clear that Harry was to be the chosen one, not Neville. So this theory on my behalf is completely debunked based on this logic. I hope you can see that too. Moving forth. The slowly revolving Professor Trelawney sank back into the silver mass below and vanished. The silence within the office was absolute. Neither Dumbledore nor Harry or any of the other portraits made a sound. Even Fawkes had fallen silent. Professor Dumbledore, Harry said very quietly, for Dumbledore, still staring at the pensive, seemed completely lost in thought. Does that mean? What does that mean? It meant, said Dumbledore, that the person who has the only chance of conquering Voldemort for good was born at the end of July, nearly 16 years ago. This boy would be born to parents who had already defied Voldemort 3 times. Harry felt as though something was closing in upon him. His breathing seemed difficult again. It means May. Dumbledore took a deep breath. We're joined by my lovely Karen. Hi, baby. Hi. Yeah. The thing is, Harry, he said softly, that it may not have met you at all. If you heard my earlier point, you would have known that it would. This prophecy could have applied to 2 wizard boys, both born at the end of July that year. No. Wait. If you listen to my earlier rant about the prophecy, you would know this is not the case. Both of whom had parents in water things. Both sets of parents having narrowly escaped Voldemort 3 times. One of course was you. The other was Neville Longbottom. But then why was it my name on the prophecy and not Neville's? Because of the logic in the prophecy! The official record was labeled after Voldemort's attack on you as a child, said Dumbledore. It seemed plain to the keeper of the Hall of Prophecy that Voldemort could have only tried to kill you because he knew you to be the one whose symbol was referring. Then it might not be me, said Harry. I am afraid, said Dumbledore slowly, looking as though every word cost him a great effort, that there is no doubt that it is you. And it is, because of the logic. But you said Neville was born at the end of July, too. And his mom and dad. You are forgetting the next part of the prophecy. The final identifying picture of the boy who would vanquish Voldemort. Voldemort himself would mock him as his equal. And so he did, Harry. He chose you, not Neville. He gave you that scar that's proof of blessing and curse. But he might have chosen wrong, said Harry. He might have marked the wrong person. He chose the boy he thought most likely to be a danger to him, said Dumbledore. And notice this, Harry. He chose not the pure blood, which according to his creed is the only kind of wizard worth being or knowing, but but the half-blood, like himself. He saw himself in you before he had ever seen you, and in marking you with that scar, he did not kill you as he intended, but he gave you powers and a future which have bidden you to escape him not once, but 4 times so far. Something that neither your parents nor Neville's parents ever achieved. Why did he do it then? Said Harry, who felt numb and cold. Why did he try and kill me as a baby? He should have waited to see whether Neville or I looked more dangerous when we were older, and tried to kill whoever it was then. That's actually a good point. But again, the prophecy's logic clearly states it's Harry. That might have indeed been the more practical course, said Dumbledore, except that Voldemort's information about the prophecy was incomplete. The Hogshead Inn, which Sybil chose for its cheapness, has long attracted, shall we say, a more interesting clientele than Three Broomsticks. As you and your friends found out to cost an eye to my memory, it is a place where it is never safe to assume you are not being overheard. Of course, I had not dreamed, when I set out to meet Sybil Trelawney, that I would hear anything worth overhearing. Our only one stroke of good fortune was that the eavesdropper was detected only a short way into the prophecy and thrown from the building. So he only heard the first part, the part foretelling the birth of a boy in July to parents who had thrice defied Voldemort. Consequently, he could not want his master to attack you to risk transferring power to you, again mocking you as his equal, so that Voldemort never knew that there might be danger in attacking you, that it might be wise to wait or learn more. He did not know that you would have power the Dark Lord knows not. But I don't, said Harry in a strangled voice. I haven't any powers he hasn't got. I couldn't fight the way he did tonight. I can't possess people or kill them. There is a room in the Department of Mysteries, interrupted Dumbledore, that is kept locked at all times. It contains a force that is at once more wonderful and more terrible than human intelligence forces of nature. It is also, perhaps, the most mysterious of the many subjects for study that reside there. It is the power held within that room that you possess, in such quantities, in which Voldemort has not at all. The power that took you to save Sirius tonight. Also, that power also saved you from possession by Voldemort, because he could not bear to reside in a body so full of the force he detests. In the end, it mattered not that you could not close your mind. It was your heart that saved you. Harry closed his eyes. If he had not gone to save Sirius, Sirius would not have died. Or to stave off the moment when he could have to think of Sirius again, Harry asked without caring much about the answer. The end of the prophecy was something about neither can live while the other survives, said Dumbledore. So, said Harry, dredging up the words from what felt like a deep well of despair inside him. So does that mean that one of us is going to kill the other one in the end? Yes. Said Dumbledore. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Somewhere far beyond the office walls, Harry could not hear the sound of voices. Students heading down to the great hall for an early breakfast, perhaps. It seemed impossible that there could be people in the world who still desired food, who laughed, Neither knew nor cared that Sirius Black was gone forever. Sirius seemed miles away already, even if a part of Harry still believed that he only pulled back that veil. He would have found Sirius looking back at him, greeting him perhaps, with his laugh like a bark. How very dog-like. Or canine. I feel I owe you another explanation, Harry, said Dumbledore hesitantly. You may perhaps have wondered why I never chose you as a prefect. I must confess that I rather thought you had enough responsibility to be going on with at the moment. Harry looked up at him and saw a tear trickling down Dumbledore's face into his long silver beard. And that is the end of this lengthy chapter. I'm sorry it took so long, but I hope you have thoroughly enjoyed it. Join me next week when we finish the book with chapter 38. The second war begins. Ooh. Until then, bye!